I think it would be reasonable to assume, correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't be wrong, no, I can't be wrong, because I'm going to be assuming that most of you haven't in actual fact formed your own theories of everything. You haven't had the opportunity to deeply contemplate that which you think you are. This is the whole thing about the spiritual awakening, people. And for the benefit of those of you that are new to the channel, I've been through this spiritual awakening, and I'm 14 years out of the initial egoic imploding, and I have incessantly, day in, day out, every single day since then, endeavoured to seek out some rhyme and reason to why these things happen. Now, if you've had spiritual experiences, phenomenological experiences, supernatural experiences, whereby you have seen into differing conscious dimensions, then it will be a natural thing for you to start to doubt the reality of this one. Those of you, for instance, who have had high doses of psychedelic mushrooms or substances, in actual fact, if you've had near-death experiences or out-of-body experiences, any of these things, then you will most certainly begin to be doubting the reality of this everyday consciousness. For people who haven't had any excursions outside the everyday state of consciousness, then they will never ever lend themselves to thinking in such ways. So, let's do a vetting process. How many of you, viewers, have had supernatural experiences and can relate to some of the things I say about my supernatural experiences? Now, if I get 100 hits on this video and I get 5 people who have had supernatural experiences, well, that's 5 of you which will begin to grasp what I'm saying. Now, if that 5% of you are very, very versed in Eastern philosophy in general, and mysticism, spirituality and religion, if you are very versed in all of those subject matter, then you will continue with me along my journey and you'll be able to grasp a little bit more of it. And so we can see that there are special circumstances that we have to have experienced to give rise to certain thinking patterns. Our consciousness has to be introduced to certain conscious environments before we're going to start to discount this one. And so, if any of you can remotely grasp that who haven't had these, and why I say that is because it's very difficult, of course. If you have never had a particular experience, then if you don't even have anything remotely which you can relate that to, which you can have a little bit of a comparison to, then you've got no idea what that other person's experienced. If you have had a near-death experience, or an out-of-body experience, or a high-dose entheogen experience, then you're in the ballpark. And so you will know from those encounters that you went to a different world. And that world seemed at least equally as viable as this one. When that happens, then you go, oh fuck, oh fuck. It seems there's many worlds here. Now, I've experienced many varieties of these different conscious realms, and so I am now an adherent to the many worlds hypothesis. And when I dream, I'm convinced that I go to one of these other parallel worlds. Whenever we dream, we enter into a different state of consciousness. And these states of consciousness, I don't consider to be just random neurons firing in our heads. I consider that we leave our bodies and we enter into different astral dimensions. If you have left your bodies and entered into these dimensions, you will know that there are many varieties of them. How do you mate? And you can't get away from these dudes. But I suppose we've got to be grateful that we've got grass. I've been in lots of countries in the world where it's so hot that there isn't any grass. And it's a very dismal affair. i.e. Greece, for instance. Can't find any green around that fucking country. So, before I continue this discourse, I will say that I'm feeling somewhat dissociated. I'm not my proper self, so I am now in another state of consciousness. And this state of consciousness is kind of like a dreamy state of consciousness, of slipping out of this reality, and I'm not even on anything. This is the 4th day now, Kratom withdrawals, and I slept great last night. I took 5 ounces of Amanita muscaria. Didn't have such clear and memorable dreams, but I slept soundly all through the night. And so I've got, you know, the thing in your throat, the thing in your chest, the thing in your heart, the thing in your solar plexus, you know, the feeling of the angst, the desire, the longing for that satiation, and the certain cells in the body are looking for it, they're seeking it out, and they're in a state of agitation. These cells have now to be conditioned into not receiving their fix. And so whether they die or lie dormant, I don't know. But that's what has to happen. And as to why I'm feeling euphoric, I've got no idea. It's just kind of weird. It's just weird, people. And so because of the acuity that I look at the world with, and the consciousness that I experience it with, well, it seems it's not an everyday level of consciousness. And we can see that different people are in different states of consciousness. When I listen to Russell Brand, that guy, his mind fires so rapidly. His archive of language and concepts and knowledge is so at hand. He never stops or pauses for a second. Rapid succession of all these, you know, big words, esoteric words and concepts and everything. And he'll just bang, 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 bang. And he goes into some sort of manic state. For those of you that, you know, watch Russell Brand, he just goes into a place, people. He goes into a state of consciousness. So this state of consciousness where Russell Brand goes, I consider that it's very liably attributing to his desire to seek. It's the same with Jordan Peterson. Peterson goes into this deeply concentrated aura. And I suppose some of you may consider that, you know, I've got a little bit of a similarity to both of those, in that I appear to be stuck in a groove, emphatic about a certain something. And, you know, I can't, with any good conscience, tell you why that is. It's just that spirits are moving within us, you see. But what I do know is what's happening now. I don't know whether any of you have noticed, but I've said it about a week or 10 days ago in a video. There is something happening, and more people are leaning more towards religions and maybe spirituality and higher states of consciousness and things like that. And why this is happening, of course, is because we are all becoming disillusioned with the state of the world, with the lies and the deception. And this is one of the reasons why many of you are not gelling with what I'm saying, because you desperately want there to be truth. You want truth to win over deception. You want truth to win over lies. And that's a natural response when you live a fear-based life. But I don't live a fear-based life, and I'm completely indifferent to who gets into power, to whether or not there is a nuclear war or anything of like that, because I'm convinced to my core that this isn't the only experience that we're ever going to have or have had. And as much as I love my daughter and wish for her to have the best possible life, if we have a nuclear holocaust, then we're all going to be gone within a flash in any case. And even if we're not all gone in a flash and the world is in topsy-turvy, well, it's just another variety of human experience that we'll have to get used to. And human beings, being human beings, will always find something good out of the terrible. And so it's just another paradigm, people. So why should we be in fear about other paradigms? I've been in terrible compromised states where I've been compromised by, I would say, the devil himself. It felt like I was being compromised by the devil himself. I felt the presence of evil hanging around me, thick in the air for 2 whole months, trying to compromise me and see if it could have power over me. But it couldn't. And so then it went away. So I know what these things feel like, people. And then when Jesus speaks about being compromised by the devil in the desert, well, I know what that is. And I know lots of the stuff that is spoken about in the Bible. And I'm not discounting that there's any validity to lots of it. But the Bibles are only telling you, I don't know what percentage of the so-called truths, but they are not telling you how to find God. I've found God in many other ways, and I've read the Bible for many years now and listened to hundreds and hundreds of scholars, and I've never even come close by reading the Old and New Testament to finding that essence of what Jesus was speaking about. The Christos is related to consciousness. It's a facet of consciousness that potentially we all could have. But you see, even in the New Testament, Jesus readily accepted that everybody didn't have it. It was only the very select few. And those of you who listen avidly to biblical scholars, then you will be aware that Jesus had at least 2 varieties of discourses. He had one for the masses and he had one for the esoteric school. And so, what he said in the esoteric schools is very different to what he said to the masses, the exoteric. And so, even he made a divide. And so when it says that I haven't come to bring peace, I've come with a sword, well, that's a classic example of what he said. He came to not physically bring a divide, but metaphysically to bring awareness to those who had the software, the wherewithal, the spirit. We are not all spirited beings on this planet, people. I'm absolutely convinced about that. There are many so-called human beings that will never ever taste the essence of what people speak about in relation to the Christos. You see, as much as I admire very highly intelligent beings like the 2 I mentioned in previous videos, Brett Weinstein, He doesn't have any adherence whatsoever. He has never had any experience in his whole life which would indicate to him that there is a God. And so therefore, albeit he's highly intelligent, in a matrixial way, he is devoid of spirit. And so we can see this. Now we could say that Brand has finally found his spirit. You could say that Brand was already long ago on the journey to finding his spirit. And he and Weinstein actually touched on this in their conversation. Weinstein says something like, well, you know, your initial days of, you know, being a drug addict was an indication of your crying out for a higher being. And it's through that trauma that you discovered that higher self. And there is truth in that, because I know that to be true from a personal perspective. It seems that we do need to have the greatest of trauma to shake us out of our somnambulism and shake us into a different paradigm of consciousness. At least to close the ego down, because the ego, being a very powerful force to be reckoned with, it wants to take mastery over this human experience, because as soon as the ego is superseded by spirit, then the ego has to reconcile with the whole thing being an illusion. And ego is nothing more than a magician and a liar and a deceiver. So if anything is Satan in this world, it is the ego which is Satan, people. And God consciousness is the higher self. So we are spiritual beings, some of us, not all of us. There's many here that are just automaton. And I'm convinced that there's many varying spirits here that have, you know, different formats and agendas. And it's a bit like, you know, in the first Star Wars movie, when Luke Skywalker goes into that bar in the desert, you know, in all the caves, and there's all different sorts of creatures from around the world. It's like that. I can feel it's like that, I can intuit it's like that. And so, you know, I'm trying to make it plain. And I'm not trying to destroy. What am I doing? I suppose, you know, just like what Jesus said, I've come with a sword. Because I'm pissing on your parade if you have false beliefs. If you have beliefs, I'm pissing on your parade, because belief isn't truth. Faith isn't truth. For all of you faithers out there, you are deluding yourselves because you don't have the truth that you think you have. It's all fiction, it's all Maya. And that's what I'm saying. But there is something that we can contact. There is another state of consciousness, or there's a myriad states of consciousness, like on a graphic equalizing bar. You can go up and down in these states of consciousness. Or rather, you probably just elevate. I don't know whether you could ever go down. I don't know how that would work. How you know, unless you forgot what you'd learned, you know, you became less conscious in some way. But there is some sort of elevation to be had here, and some people could consider that, you know, godly. And, you know, I don't discount that it could very well be godly. But what I'm saying is that this God isn't Jehovah, it isn't Allah, it isn't Jesus. Jesus was only speaking about the essence. And if he said, I am, you know, that I am, on the internet you can see 100 different names what Jesus was called. The Omega and the Alpha, and the I am that I am, and, you know, everything conceivable. 100 different names, people. That's how vague and broad it gets. And so, he wasn't just the Messiah. He wasn't just God. Because if it was just God, then that's all they would ever need to have said. It's just God, that's it. God encapsulates everything. But they never. They used 100 different terminologies to express what this notion of Christ was. Think about that.